In the cold silence of deep space, stories often travel faster than light. Whispers move from one planet to another, carried by traders, smugglers, and frightened survivors. And among all these whispers, one name always brings fear: the Exortac assassins. They are spoken of as shadows with blades, killers who strike without warning and vanish before anyone can fight back. For centuries, they have been known as the most feared alien warriors in the galaxy. Children of other species grow up hearing their name in bedtime warnings, and even soldiers hesitate when they sense the mark of an Exortac nearby. They are merciless, deadly, and proud of it. Yet a strange rumor has begun to spread across the stars, a rumor that sounds impossible, almost like a joke. Some say the assassins, those cold-blooded killers, have been seen landing on human colonies. Not to destroy, not to hunt, but to leave something behind. Not weapons, not treasure, but children, their own young. The assassins, feared by all, are trusting humans, of all creatures, to guard and protect their offspring. At first, most who heard this story laughed. How could it be true? Why would a race that trusts no one suddenly believe in humans? It made no sense. But slowly, reports came from far-off outposts and border colonies, each telling the same tale. Dark ships shaped like blades cutting the stars, arriving without warning. The assassins stepping out in silence, carrying strange pods, each one glowing with the faint heartbeat of alien children. And instead of attacking, they would place the pods in human hands and say only one line: guard them. Only you can. The mystery grew deeper with every sighting. Other alien races mocked the idea, calling it human arrogance to believe such powerful killers would choose them. But the humans themselves did not understand it either. Why would the assassins, who could kill armies with a single squad, not protect their own young? Why risk them in the hands of a race still considered weak and primitive compared to the great empires of the galaxy? It was a question that no one could answer. And yet, the evidence was there. Colonists saw the children. Soldiers watched the assassins leave. The story was no longer rumor, it was fact. Across the galaxy, one truth was beginning to take shape. Even the deadliest aliens, assassins who trusted no one, somehow trusted humans. But why? No one dared to speak the reason, because no one knew. All that remained was fear and curiosity. On one quiet colony far from Earth, the people lived an ordinary life, farming the soil of a strange red planet under twin suns. They were simple folk, not warriors, not soldiers, just settlers trying to build a home. But one night, their lives changed forever. A dark shadow cut across the sky, blocking the stars. At first, they thought it was a storm. Then, as the ground shook and lights blazed from above, they saw the shape of the ship. Long, sharp, like a blade made of darkness, it fell slowly toward the surface. The people gathered, their voices trembling. They had heard the stories. They knew this was no trading vessel, no peaceful visitor. This was a Exortac warship. Some screamed, some ran, some prayed. But none could stop what was coming. The ship landed with a sound like thunder, its hull burning with strange marks, as if it had passed through countless battles. From the glowing ramp, figures appeared, tall, armored, with eyes that burned like cold fire. Their movements were silent, like predators walking among prey. The colonists froze, expecting death. Mothers pulled their children close, men grabbed old hunting rifles that would be useless against such enemies. The assassins moved forward, and the crowd waited for the slaughter. But then something strange happened. The assassins were carrying pods, round and glowing, and inside each pod was a small figure, fragile, breathing slowly. Alien children. The leader of the assassins stepped forward. His voice was deep, filled with command, but also something else, something almost human, almost desperate. He placed one of the pods gently on the ground before the colonists and spoke only 5 words. Only you can guard them. The colonists looked at each other in shock. Not one person moved. The leader repeated his words, louder this time, his voice cutting through the night air. Only humans can be trusted. And then, without another sound, the assassins turned back toward their ship. The ramp closed, the engines roared, and the vessel lifted into the sky like a dark shadow disappearing into the stars. The colonists stood there in silence, hearts racing, staring at the pods glowing softly on the ground. They had expected death, but instead, they had been given a mystery. Why had the most feared killers in the galaxy placed their children in human hands? What secret did the assassins know? And what danger was coming that made them believe only humans could stand against it? The questions burned in every mind, and though no answers came, one thing was clear: the galaxy had changed forever. For if even alien assassins trusted humans with their young, then humanity was far more important to the universe than anyone had ever believed. The night after the first ship landed, the colony could not sleep. Whispers filled every home, and fear hung heavy in the air. Some thought the assassins would return to kill them once they had left their children behind. Others believed it was a cruel trick, that the pods contained not children but weapons waiting to explode. Yet no explosion came, and no soldiers followed. The pods remained where they had been placed, glowing faintly in the dark, each heartbeat inside reminding the humans that this was no trick. These were living beings, young and fragile, entrusted to them by a race that trusted no one. Dawn came slowly, the twin suns painting the red soil in gold and fire, and the colonists gathered again in the square where the pods had been left. The leader of the colony, an old man named Harris, stood before them. His hands trembled as he spoke, for he was no soldier, only a farmer who had once served on Earth before the colony was built. "We must decide," he said, his voice low but steady. "These children are not ours. They are alien. They are dangerous. But they have been left here, and the assassins said we must guard them. If we refuse, who knows what wrath will fall upon us?" Some nodded in fear, while others shouted in anger. A woman cried, asking why humans should risk their lives for killers who had never shown mercy. A younger man argued that perhaps this was an honor, a chance for humans to prove their worth in the galaxy. The argument grew heated, but it ended when a sound came from above. The ground shook once more as another shadow fell across the sky. A second ship was arriving. This one was larger, darker, and its hull was marked with fresh scars from battle. The people scattered, some running for cover, others frozen in terror. The first ship had left them children, but what would the second one bring? The vessel landed with a deep roar, dust and fire rising around it. The air seemed to grow colder as the ramp opened, and once again, the Exortac emerged. This time there were more of them, tall figures wrapped in armor blacker than night. Their steps were heavy, but their movements were silent, precise, like shadows wearing skin. At their center walked a leader different from the rest. His armor bore symbols of rank, his eyes glowed brighter, and his presence seemed to bend the air around him. The humans felt their hearts tighten. This was no ordinary assassin, this was a commander. The assassins carried more pods, each one pulsing with life, each one holding another child. They placed them carefully in the square, beside the first group. Then the commander raised his hand, and the humans fell silent. His voice echoed not just in the air but inside their very bones, deep and commanding, as if the stars themselves spoke through him. "Humans," he said, "you are chosen. Our young cannot survive with us. Our enemies know this weakness. They strike where we cannot defend. But you are different. You fight for reasons no other race understands. You fight for family. You fight for hope. That is why you will guard them." The words struck the colonists with confusion and fear. Guard them? Against what? Why humans, who had so little, who were not the strongest, not the most advanced? Some dared to ask, voices shaking. Why us? Why not your own kind? The commander's eyes burned brighter, and for a moment it seemed he might strike them down. But instead, he leaned forward, his voice low and filled with something almost like respect. "Because we cannot. We are killers. We are feared. But we are not trusted. Even our own children do not see us as protectors. They see us as death. But humans, even your enemies admit one truth: you guard your young with your lives. You protect even when you are weak. You defend even when you cannot win. That is why His words left silence behind. The colonists looked at each other, unable to answer. They were farmers, workers, ordinary men and women. Could they truly guard the children of assassins, children who might one day grow into killers themselves? Yet as they looked at the pods, at the fragile forms sleeping within, something stirred inside them. Fear, yes, but also a strange sense of duty. Harris stepped forward, his old hands shaking but his voice clear. "We do not know why you have chosen us," he said. "But we will not let children die, no matter whose children they are." The commander studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Then you understand," he said. "This is not a request. This is your place in the galaxy. Do not fail." With that, he turned, and the assassins followed him back to their ship. The ramp closed, the engines flared, and once more the sky was empty, leaving only silence and the strange glow of the pods. The colonists stood together, their fear mixed now with something else, a heavy burden, a mystery, and a dangerous honor. The assassins had not come to kill them. They had come to trust them. And with that trust came a question that burned deeper than ever. What secret truth did the assassins know about humans, a truth that made them hand over their young to a species so small, so fragile, and so untested in the galaxy? The answer would not come easily, but one thing was certain: the assassins would return, and when they did, the humans' choice would shape the fate of more than just their colony. It might decide the fate of the entire galaxy. The colony lived in silence for many days after the second ship departed, their ordinary lives broken by the weight of the strange gift left in their care. The alien pods glowed softly in the center of the settlement, each one pulsing with a steady rhythm, each one carrying a life not human yet strangely familiar. At first, many avoided going near them, too frightened to look inside, but eventually curiosity overcame fear. Slowly, the colonists gathered around and peered through the clear surfaces. What they saw made them pause. The children inside were small, fragile, and not the monsters they had imagined. Their skin shimmered faintly, their features sharp but innocent, their tiny hands curled as they slept. They were not killers, they were only young lives, no different from human babies in their helplessness. This discovery brought new conflict. Some humans felt pity and compassion. They argued that no matter where life came from, children were innocent and deserved protection. Others were not so quick to accept. They whispered dark warnings, reminding everyone that these were not ordinary alien children. They were the offspring of assassins, creatures born to kill, and by raising them the colony might be feeding future enemies who would one day return to destroy them. The debate divided the people. Around the meeting table of the colony, voices clashed with anger and fear. One farmer named Jonah shouted that they should send the pods into the desert and leave them for the assassins to reclaim. A teacher named Elira stood firm against him, declaring that abandoning helpless children would make them no better than the monsters they feared. "We are human," she said, her voice strong. "And being human means more than survival. It means compassion. It means courage. If we turn our backs on these children, then we betray what makes us different." But Jonah countered, his face red with fury. "Compassion will not save us when those things grow into killers. Do you not see? This is their plan. They leave their young with us so we raise them, feed them, and when they are strong enough, they will tear us apart from the inside. We will be raising the blades that cut our throats." The room filled with shouting until Harris, the old leader, slammed his hand on the table and demanded silence. His voice was weary but sharp. "Enough. We cannot know the truth. Maybe this is a trap. Maybe this is a test. But we must ask ourselves one question: if they were human children, what would we do?" The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone knew the answer. If they were human, no one would question protecting them. But these were not human, and that truth weighed on every heart. Outside, the pods glowed quietly as if listening to the debate inside. Day by day, life in the colony became strained. People argued in the streets. Some refused to go near the pods, while others began bringing food, blankets, and small toys, treating the alien young as if they were their own. The children inside did not wake, still resting in whatever deep sleep their species required, but their presence changed everything. Work slowed, tempers flared, and trust among neighbors began to crumble. Some whispered of leaving the colony altogether, abandoning the strange burden. But deep down, all knew the assassins would not allow such betrayal. The Exortac had chosen them for a reason, and running away might bring death to them all. At night, Harris sat alone watching the stars, his thoughts heavy. He remembered the words of the assassin commander, "You fight for reasons no other race understands. You fight for family." The old man wondered if that was true. Humanity had fought endless wars, spilled rivers of blood, and turned on each other countless times. And yet, yes, there was something else too. Something that made them stand against impossible odds for the sake of their children, their homes, their people. Could that be what the assassins saw? Could it be that even killers recognized the one thing humans carried that others did not? The dilemma grew sharper when a group of colonists secretly approached Harris with a plan. They wanted to hide the pods far from the colony, bury them deep in the desert where no one would find them. "If the assassins return, we will say they were taken," they argued. "It is better to risk anger than to raise death in our own homes." Harris felt his blood run cold at their words. He knew such an act would doom them all, for the assassins had trusted them, and betrayal would bring a storm they could not survive. He warned them to stay their hands, but their eyes held fear too great to be silenced. The colony was cracking from the inside, torn between compassion and fear, between honor and survival. And still, the pods glowed, each beat a reminder of the choice that weighed on every soul. The dilemma was no longer about alien children. It was about what it meant to be human. Would they prove the assassins right and show the galaxy that humans could be trusted even when the cost was great? Or would fear rule them, turning them into cowards who abandoned the helpless to save themselves? No one knew the answer yet, but one truth had already become clear. Whatever choice they made, it would change not only their colony but the fate of all humanity in the stars. The colony's debate over the assassin children was cut short when the first signs of danger appeared. It began with strange signals caught on the long-range scanners, faint whispers of ships moving in the void beyond the red planet. At first, the colonists thought it was nothing more than trade routes or passing explorers, but soon the patterns grew clear. These were not merchants. These were warships, moving in formation, scanning, circling, hunting. Harris and his council gathered in fear as the screens filled with shifting lights, each one a vessel creeping closer. "They are searching for something," whispered Alira, her eyes fixed on the display. The old leader nodded grimly. "They are searching for the children." The truth struck everyone like a blade. The assassins had left their young with humans not out of trust alone, but because enemies hunted them. The Exortac were feared killers, but every killer has enemies, and theirs were legion. Now those enemies knew the weakness of the assassins, their children, and they would burn entire worlds to seize them. The humans understood then why the assassins had turned to them. They could not protect their own offspring without drawing endless war. But humans were different, overlooked, underestimated, considered too small to matter in galactic struggles. The assassins had hidden their young in plain sight, among a species that no one saw as a true threat. The colony's fear deepened. They were not just caretakers, they were shields standing between the assassins' enemies and the lives of innocent children. Days passed, and the signals grew closer. Shadows flickered against the stars as dark ships prowled the edges of the system, searching, waiting. The colonists whispered of abandoning the pods, placing them outside the colony in hopes that the hunters would take them and leave. But others shouted that doing so would doom them all, for the assassins would surely return and discover the betrayal. The dilemma twisted tighter with every passing hour, fear clawing at every heart. Then the first attack came. A small scout ship slipped past the colony's defenses and landed near the farms. From its belly poured alien raiders, lean and armored in bone-like plating, their eyes burning with hunger. They moved swiftly, cutting through fields and tearing down buildings, their weapons spitting fire. The colonists screamed and fled, their simple rifles useless against the attackers. But even in chaos, something remarkable happened. A group of humans, farmers with nothing more than tools and old hunting guns, formed a line between the invaders and the glowing pods. They fired desperately, holding their ground, shouting to each other with courage they did not know they had. The aliens snarled and pressed forward, but the humans refused to step aside. When one fell, another took his place. When their bullets ran dry, they swung shovels, axes, and bare fists. Their line broke and reformed again and again, but not once did they move away from the children. From the hills, more colonists rushed to join the fight, and slowly the raiders realized something strange. The humans were not protecting gold or weapons. They were defending lives. To the hunters, this made no sense. No other species would risk so much for children not their own. But to the humans, there was no question. These young, alien or not, were under their care, and to abandon them was unthinkable. The battle ended when the humans managed to destroy the raiders' ship with fire and explosives, forcing the survivors to retreat into the desert. The colony lay in ruins, smoke rising from shattered homes, but the pods were safe. Not one had been touched. Blood stained the soil, and families wept for the fallen, but even in grief there was pride. They had stood their ground against a stronger foe and kept their promise. That night, as they buried the dead, Harris looked upon the glowing pods and felt a strange clarity. "Now I understand," he whispered to Alira. "This is why they chose us. Not because we are strong, not because we are powerful, but because we will protect life even when it costs us everything." Yet even as he spoke, danger still loomed. The first attack had been only a test, a scout probing the defenses. Larger ships still circled the system, and more enemies would come. The colony was marked now, its secret no longer safe. The assassins' children were no longer hidden, they were a target. And as the humans prepared their broken colony for another wave, they realized the hidden danger was not only the hunters outside, but also the growing fear inside their own people. For every brave soul who stood ready to fight, there were others who whispered of surrender, who feared that the price of protecting alien children was too high. The colony stood at the edge of destruction, torn between courage and despair, and in the silence of the night, the glowing pods pulsed like beating hearts, a reminder that their choice was not yet finished. The colony did not have time to rest after the first attack. The smoke had barely cleared, the wounded were still being treated, and the dead were still being buried when the next wave of danger arrived. High above the red planet, the enemy ships shifted formation, their dark hulls glinting like predators circling prey. The humans watched with dread as scanners showed larger vessels entering orbit, each bristling with weapons. The scouts had failed, but now the hunters were coming in force. Harris gathered the people in the ruined meeting hall, his old voice carrying both weight and exhaustion. "We stood once, and we will stand again," he told them. "But now we face more than raiders. Now we face armies." His words brought silence, for everyone knew the truth. The colony had no real defenses, no trained soldiers, no powerful weapons. They had farming tools, old rifles, and their courage. Against warships, it seemed hopeless. Some shouted that they should give up, carry the pods outside the colony, and surrender them to the hunters. "We are not assassins," one woman cried. "We cannot fight endless battles for children that are not even ours." Others stood firm, their voices strong. "If we give them up, we are finished anyway," said Alira. "The assassins trusted us. If we betray that trust, they will return, and they will destroy us for our cowardice. Better to die with honor than live with shame." The hall filled with voices, anger, fear and desperation clashing together, but in the end Harris raised his hand and the people grew quiet. "We cannot escape this test," he said. "The assassins chose us for a reason. Perhaps they saw something in us that we do not yet see in ourselves. We will not hand over the children. We will protect them, as if they were our own. And if we fall, we will fall as humans." The decision was made, though fear still lingered in every heart. That night, as the colony prepared for battle, families said goodbye to one another, uncertain if they would live to see another dawn. The pods were moved into the central hall, surrounded by makeshift barricades. The colonists built traps in the streets, sharpened tools into weapons, and rigged fuel tanks as explosives. They had no shields, no heavy guns, but they had determination, and sometimes determination is stronger than steel. When the attack came, it fell like a storm. The enemy ships descended with fire raining from the skies, their guns tearing into the colony. The ground shook, buildings crumbled, and screams filled the air. From the burning wrecks poured alien soldiers, taller and stronger than humans, their armor glinting, their blades glowing with deadly energy. They came not to conquer, but to seize the pods, and they fought with ruthless precision. But the humans did not scatter. They fought. Farmers, teachers, children barely old enough to hold a rifle, they all stood in the streets, firing, striking, and refusing to move aside. Explosions lit the night as fuel tanks detonated, crushing invaders under falling debris. Traps hidden in the sand tore through enemy ranks. And though every loss of life cut deep, the humans did not yield an inch. Again and again the aliens surged forward, and again they were thrown back, not by strength, but by stubborn will. Even when the colonists' weapons broke, they fought with knives, with rocks, with bare hands. They fought like creatures who had nothing to lose but their humanity, and that was something no enemy could ever take. The battle raged through the night, and slowly the hunters began to falter. They could not understand the madness of humans, who risked everything for children that were not even of their blood. To the hunters, it was unthinkable. To the humans, it was simple. They had been given lives to guard, and they would rather die than fail. By dawn, the battlefield was littered with smoke and broken bodies. The enemy retreated to their ships, leaving behind scorched ground but no victory. The pods in the hall still glowed, untouched, alive. The humans had held the line. Exhausted, bleeding, half the colony destroyed, but alive. As the survivors gathered, their faces hollow yet proud, Harris looked upon them and spoke softly. "We have been tested. And we have shown who we are." His voice cracked with grief for the fallen, but there was strength in his words. "We are human. And that means we protect. Even when hope is gone, even when the cost is too high, we do not abandon the helpless. That is what makes us different." The people bowed their heads, tears running down their faces, but they felt a fire inside them that no enemy could put out. They had passed the test, though they knew more trials would come. The assassins had trusted them, and now that trust had been proven. Yet far beyond the colony, in the darkness of space, more ships gathered, more eyes watched, and more questions remained. Why had the assassins placed such faith in humanity? What future did they see in a species so small, so fragile, yet so unwilling to break? The answers were still hidden, but the humans had earned something greater than victory. They had earned respect. And respect, in a galaxy of killers, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The battle had ended, but the silence that followed was heavier than the noise of war. The colony lay in ruins, smoke rising from collapsed homes, fires still burning in the streets, and the wounded crying out in pain. The people were exhausted, their bodies broken, their numbers cut in half, but the pods at the center of the hall still glowed. Not one had been lost. The humans had stood against armies and survived, though at a cost so high it would be remembered for generations. As dawn spread across the red sky, the survivors gathered, their faces marked with soot and blood, and looked upon what they had done. They had protected the children of assassins, creatures that were not their own, and they had done so without promise of reward, without hope of mercy, without certainty that it even mattered. They had done it because it was right. And then, as the people stood in silence, the ground trembled again. This time the sound was not of enemy raiders but of something greater. From the horizon rose shadows so vast they blocked the twin suns. Warships, dozens of them, each one larger than the colony itself, descended in perfect formation. Their hulls bore the mark of the Exortac, the assassins themselves, returning at last. The colonists froze, unsure whether this was salvation or their final doom. The ships landed with thunder that shook the world, and from their ramps poured ranks of assassins clad in armor black as night. At their head walked the commander, his eyes glowing like fire in the smoke. He strode into the broken colony and stopped before the pods. For a long moment, he said nothing. His warriors stood behind him in silence, the air thick with tension. Then at last he turned to Harris, the weary leader who leaned on a staff to keep himself upright. The commander's voice carried across the ruins, deep and resonant, as if the stars themselves bent to listen. "You have done what no other could," he said. "Our enemies came for what is most precious, and you did not break. You stood when all reason said to fall. You fought when all strength was gone. And you kept your word, though it was never sworn." Harris bowed his head, too tired to speak, but Alira stepped forward, her voice shaking. "We did only what had to be done. Children are innocent, no matter where they come from. If protecting them makes us fools, then we will always be fools." The assassin commander's gaze lingered on her, and then he did something no human expected. He lowered his head, not in anger, but in respect. His voice softened, though its weight was still immense. "This is why we chose you. We are killers, feared across the stars. No one sees us as protectors. No one trusts us to guard life, not even our own young. But you are different. You protect not for gain, not for glory, but because it is your nature. You protect because you cannot do otherwise. That is why we trust you." The assassins behind him bowed as one, a gesture never before seen by human eyes. The colonists stared in disbelief, for the deadliest race in the galaxy had bent their pride before them. The commander stepped closer, placing his armored hand upon one of the glowing pods. The child inside stirred, tiny eyes blinking open for the first time, and a strange silence filled the air as if the universe itself paused to witness the moment. The commander's voice dropped to a whisper. "These children will grow not as we are, but as they must be. You will raise them, guide them, teach them what we cannot. Perhaps one day, they will change what we are. Perhaps one day, they will be more than killers." His words sent a shiver through every listener. The assassins had not given their children to humans simply for safety, they had given them for something greater. They wanted their young to learn humanity, to inherit compassion, loyalty, and courage. They wanted their children to know what it meant to fight not for power, but for love. The revelation struck the colonists with awe and fear. The assassins were shaping the future of their race through humanity, planting seeds of change in soil once thought barren. And now the humans bore a responsibility far greater than survival. They were guardians of a new hope, a bond that might alter the destiny of the galaxy itself. The commander turned to leave, but before he stepped onto his ship, he spoke once more, his words etched forever in the hearts of the survivors. "Remember this, humans. In a galaxy of killers, weapons, and war, the most dangerous force is not strength or fear. The most dangerous force is a human heart." With that, the assassins departed, their vast ships rising into the sky and vanishing into the stars, leaving the colony scarred yet alive, humbled yet proud. The people watched until the last shadow disappeared, and then they looked at the pods glowing gently in the hall. The future of two races lay within them, and though the burden was heavy, the humans accepted it without question. For they had learned something in the fires of battle. Humanity's greatest power was not technology or numbers or might, it was the refusal to let the innocent fall. And as the galaxy whispered of assassins and humans standing together, the legend began, a story that would spread from world to world, that when the deadliest killers in the universe sought protectors for their children, they did not choose empires, they did not choose warriors, they did not choose kings. They chose humans.